Whenever I first think about the month of March, I think about going green. And then when I think about going green, I also think about all the green, beautiful houseplants that you can grow in your home. And a lot of people probably are gifted a lot of these potted plants or maybe even flowering houseplants, and they really don't know what to do with it. And then that's when the extension office gets the call and they're like, how do I care for these houseplants? I really don't know much about them. So I want to talk today about the light requirements required for a lot of different houseplants that help provide the light that's required and help keeps it beautiful, as well as some basic houseplants tips that are also great for keeping those houseplants looking successful all throughout the season. So I want to first talk about the different ways that you can provide light in your home. And if you think about it, throughout the seasons, whether it be winter or summer or even spring and fall, we oftentimes have different light that's coming through our different windows. And so one of the ways that you can look at light levels for a northern exposure is to look at a lot of different foliage type plants. And so I have just kind of a different myriad of houseplants that you can actually situate for the northern exposure or window in your home. And if you notice that all of these plants are pretty green, you don't see a ton of color, and so a lot of times you'll see all bright greens here represented for the northern exposure. So just to kind of talk to you a little bit about each plant, you can see right here we have the peace lily. It's very popular. A lot of people obtain those probably after funerals, or maybe they're just gifted it because it's one of the easier ones that you can grow in your home because it requires the low light levels that the northern exposure requires. So this one does really, really well. Another good one that I like is this little parlor palm. It's really pretty. It kind of gives a feathery type look in comparison to our peace lily that we have to the left of it. And then we also have heartleaf philodendron. It's really sweet and cute. It has more of a heart-shaped leaf to it, and it also is very glossy in color, but still very easy to take care of and situate in the northern type window. And then right here to my left, you can see we have Draxena. Draxena is like a corn plant, and you can kind of see that is mimicked in the different types of leaves of foliage. But this one is really good for growing in the northern light conditions. So this kind of just represents the north light. We're going to look at some of the other lights here in just a second. Now we're going to take a look at some of the houseplants that work good for the east and also the west sides of your home or inside your home. So you can see there's a little bit more pops of color that we have in comparison to the northern exposure. So just to kind of talk about the eastern part of your home, this is going to be an area that takes indirect light. So indirect light is really good for a lot of these different houseplants that we have. And so the first one that we have that is showing a little bit of color with the white is Florist. This one is really easy to grow. It's really pretty in color. A lot of times people obtain these particular houseplants around Valentine's Day, but you can see that they have kind of almost like the petals kind of face backwards, and you've got some nice variegated leaves, kind of some more heart-shaped leaves as well that kind of give you a little bit different variety. They come in a lot of different colors, so not only can you find Floricyclamen in white, but you can also find it in shades of red and pink. So that one's really pretty. It's one of my favorites. And then to the right of it, you will see African violet. African violets are really popular, and they can not only grow in the eastern side of your home, but also in the western exposure. And so this one is really easy. It's got those fuzzy leaves to it, so it gives you a little bit of texture that's fun to play with. You can notice that African violets have purple blooms. They also can have kind of more lavender, a little bit lighter purple to it, but it's really, really pretty. You just have to be careful about watering African violets from the bottom. You don't want to water it from the very, very top around the container because they typically get crown rot really easily. So you have to be cautious about that. And then one of my favorites here is prayer plant, and it kind of looks like it's kind of the leaves look like they're in prayer, but they also have some variegated kind of look to it with some different colors that it's very, very attractive. So you can see some light green there, dark green, and even some red running through the veins of that. So that one's really pretty. And this one has caught my eye in recent years. This is a begonia that we have, and it's called escargot. So you can kind of see that with the swirl that we have in the leaf there. but very, very attractive. Of course, this one's going to do good again in eastern exposure, but begonias are really, really easy houseplants to grow. Now, I'm going to transition next to the west, and so the west takes more indirect light conditions, the same as the east, so a lot of times these can be interchangeable. So just to kind of show you some of the literature that recommends for the west side of your home, we have English ivy here, and I like English ivy, and I really like this one that we got because it's actually in like more of a wreath form here. So it's just kind of a different way to grow English ivy, and you can see it's trained up because ivy is going to tend to spread, so this way it just kind of keeps it all contained, and it's very, very attractive. A lot of times florists, and especially around weddings, you can also use this in an interesting way, maybe add other elements to it as well. But this is English ivy, and you can see that we have more mature leaves at the top, and then the little baby leaves, the more juvenile leaves, are kind of a little bit smaller in size, but very attractive. Now I have to talk about this little croton houseplant. It's really nice, especially for the fall season, against some other chrysanthemums and things like that. You can see we've got some bright colors, some yellows mixed in with some reds. Tends to look like a little bit of orange kind of here and there, kind of scattered throughout. This one is really, really pretty, especially not with just mums, but also with ornamental kale and cabbage. So this one is really good for attracting a lot of different fall displays. And then I have to talk about, especially with it being March, you can't not talk about the shamrock plant. So this is oxalis, and you can see we have a nice particular leaf structure here where it looks like you think about, you know, 4-leaf clovers, but this actually has 3 leaves to it, pretty broad, pretty bright, and then you can see we've got some little white blooms that come in there that are very, very pretty against it, and these will do well in a western type exposure. I will say oxalis also comes in purple, but green is just another great way to use, especially for the month of March. So next we're going to talk about the south exposure next. For the south window, this is going to take a little bit different light in comparison to the north, east, and west. So we're talking bright, direct light. So if you notice here, we've kind of got a mixture of different plants that you can grow for the south window. The first one I want to mention is kalanchoe. This one's really pretty, and it's also, if you notice, it's got fleshy leaves like most of these succulents that we have here. But it's also blooming, and it also has, to the bloom, it has like 4 petals, so it's really attractive, and they're almost pointed at the ends of it. And then we also have scalloped leaves that also provide some interest there as well. So we have red here, but you can also find kalanchoe in yellow and probably even some other brighter colors like orange as well. It's really one of my favorites, and it's pretty easy to take care of. Now we have a mixture of different succulents here. This one is Hobbit, and it's pretty neat because every time I think of The Hobbit, I think of the movie The Hobbit. So it's pretty interesting, and succulents have really taken off in the last few years because they're just easy to take care of. A lot of people prefer them just because they've got a lot of water in their leaves, so they don't require as much watering as some of the other houseplants do. Here's another type of succulent that we've got added in with some rocks and things like that that make it really, really attractive in the container. It's also a glazed container here in comparison to some of the other containers that we've had on the set today. And then we've got jade plant. This is a smaller jade plant, but it's really attractive too, and you know, it really makes you want to feel the leaves and feel of how fleshy those leaves really feel. But most of these plants, again, will take direct sunlight, and so the southern exposure in your home is really, really best. Now, if you think about it too, if you prefer growing edibles indoors where you have a southern exposure window, you can also incorporate things like herbs of any kind, and also some annual flowers and some vegetables as well. So this just kind of shows you a different variety of plants that you can grow. Now, with all of these house plants, there's a couple important basics that you do want to remember. The first one is about watering. Make sure that your containers have plenty of drainage holes, so that way when you do provide water, that it runs through the soil media pretty easily, and it's really easy for that to not cause any root rot issues later on. Sometimes I even like to feel around the root system, or even feel around the soil and kind of feel with my index finger, and if it feels dry to the touch, you know you probably need to go ahead and water, and if it feels wet, then you know that you're okay. You can just wait a little while longer. It's always good to take your house plants when you go to watering them, maybe into the sink, so that way that all the excess water can run down the drain, or you can even go into the shower, and it's really easy to water your houseplants that way as well because you have a drain there as well. So that is very, very important as far as water. You do want to make sure that your soil media has plenty of drainage. And so there's a lot of different houseplant medias that are available that have a mixture of vermiculite, perlite, and also other soilless media products in there that will provide good drainage. So don't go skimpy on any of those. The other thing you want to look at is probably trying to provide fertilizer. Fertilizer is important to keep those houseplants really happy. Most of the time you want to do that from March all the way to October and kind of slow that fertilizing schedule down in the wintertime because, you know, a lot of our houseplants are going to slow down their growth and they really don't need that added fertilizer like they do more in the spring or even the summer months that you grow in your home. And then lastly, I want to talk about humidity. Humidity is very important because if you think about it, when our plants dry out, sometimes that attracts other pests and issues that come along, like say spider mites or even some cottony scale or other houseplant pests that can be an issue. So the best way you can do is just take a tray, fill it up with some pebbles, and then after you do that, fill it up with water and then put the actual saucer right on top of it, and then that water is going to evaporate and it's going to be kind of like a spa treatment for your houseplants. So you might want to try that out as well. Now there's a lot of things to remember with houseplant care, so if you have any questions whatsoever on what light levels are best for your houseplant, how to water, how to fertilize, or how to just keep your plants happy at home, you can always give your local extension office a call. And I want to say a big shout out to Esley Pelly with the Garden Patch here in Smiths Grove, Kentucky, for providing all of our beautiful houseplants today. Hope you have a great gardening season, and we'll see you next time.